Happy Monday, everyone. Last week we wrapped up our third unit of information, and hopefully everybody had a chance to take our last exam. Once again, for those of you who submitted the exams prior to Sunday, I was able to sort of grade those as they came in. For those of you who submitted the exams yesterday, I will work on those. My goal is to sort of get all of those graded here within the next 2 to 3 days, I would say is my goal. So you should have both a grade, and I also am trying to give you feedback on the questions as well. So if I did take points off, I sort of specified why it was that you might have missed a few points. Typically, what I've been seeing as far as points is some of you still didn't necessarily address all of the parts of the question. So that's probably, as we're moving forward, because our next lecture exam will be the same format, it will also be an essay exam. As we're moving forward, something to keep in mind is to really, really pay attention to the questions and make sure, even if it seems obvious to you that you're addressing that part of the question, it may not be obvious to me. So make it really, really obvious so that I know that you exactly said this and you exactly said that, and that's how it's relating back to the question. Because what I found is, again, going through about half of the essays of the class so far, some of the essays you did a great job sort of addressing all the points, and then there were other essays, especially the first essay, the water scarcity essay, and the nutrient cycle essay. Those were the two where I would say I took off points more often than any of the other questions so far. And again, it was just, there were little pieces of that essay that you didn't quite hit. And again, it may feel to you that you are addressing those things, but again, I don't see it, and so I need it to be really obvious, right? So just something to think about for next time as we move into this last and final unit of information. So I'm here in Unit 4. And again, I'm going to keep Unit 3 available just in case there's anyone who needs to catch up on assignments. I'm going to keep Unit 3 available. I've done the same thing with the lab material folder. I know technically we're not using this folder anymore, but there are still some assignments in here, and so I don't want to get rid of it. So I'm leaving this available as well. But we're here in Unit 4, and we're almost at the end. We essentially have 3 weeks left of content. And then our exam will be during finals week. So it's the same format as what we saw last week. I'll give you essentially the whole week to get the exam complete. I probably will have a slightly sooner deadline as far as when the exam is going to be due, only because I have to get grades in by a very specific time, and I need to give myself plenty of time to do that. So I'll probably open the exam earlier and give you kind of a longer period in order to take that last exam, but I'll probably cut it off earlier too, simply because I need to be able to get through all of those exams to get your grades in. But this week, what we have is similar format to we've seen in previous weeks. Lecture, lab, links for office hours here. In our lecture folder this week, we are covering more of Chapter 5. So in the last unit, we covered only the very first section of Chapter 5, which was a discussion of biomes. Now what we're going to move into is we're going to talk a little bit more about the living things inside of those biomes, so something that we call biodiversity. If you're looking through your book, this is actually sections 5.4 through 5.6 of your textbook, and I've given you the notes. And then once again, I am doing videos versus recorded lectures. So the first video that I've given you is about just an overall generalized view of biodiversity. Here's what biodiversity is. Here's how it's threatened. It's sort of a very basic, again, I think I want to say it was like 20 minutes long, maybe not even 20 minutes long, but it's a very basic understanding of sort of what biodiversity is. Please keep in mind that this link is through the library. So you will need to log in as if you were logging into MyHarper. So it's your same username and your same password, but it is a library resource that I've linked for you. So you do want to make sure that you have this information available. So you will click login, and it will bring you to, here we go, Beings and Biodiversity. So again, it's about a 23-minute video that gives a really nice visual overview. So this video is a good overview of, again, some of the things that you would first see in this particular chapter. The next video is about introduced species and biodiversity. So there are certain very specific threats to biodiversity that you're going to learn about in this chapter. You'll learn about habitat loss, you'll learn about overexploitation, you'll learn about pollution, population, and then you'll also learn about this concept of invasive species, so or introduced species, whichever way you want to call it. So this is a nice video because this again goes through those sort of specific why invasives are a threat and why it's something that we're concerned about. So these two videos will sort of serve as your overview of what is in my lecture notes. Your assignment for this week is our key concepts. So I know it's been a while since we've done the key concepts, but we're going to go back and actually go do the key concepts from chapter 5. So if you don't happen to have your textbook, I was able to sort of kind of scan these pages in. So this was copied from the e-text of the book, but again, it would be essentially the same thing that you'd see in your text. So this particular activity is looking at the economic value of biodiversity. So the question is, why should we care about biodiversity? And one of the reasons, or one of the ways we can break down the benefits to biodiversity, is to break it down by the economic impact that biodiversity has. So the services that we essentially get, we call them ecosystem services, and those services we can put a value on. So if we had to replicate that ourselves as humans, if we had to somehow be able to clean the air ourselves, or create raw materials, or prevent erosion, or regulate the climate, whatever it happens to be, this is how much it would cost us. That's sort of the idea. So it's to put a numbers figure on it, which can sometimes help people to see the value of something when there's a dollar attached to it. So we're looking at two things. We're looking at the value of tropical forests, and then the value of coral reefs. And again, I apologize that the coral reef image is so small. That's just the way that it is in your book as well. So what then you're going to answer is, there's a couple of questions here at the bottom, these can you explain questions, and do the costs and benefits justify restoring coral reefs, and what about tropical rainforests, and identify economic benefits. So fairly simple activity. But again, you can either use what's in your textbook on page 114 and 115 if you have the book, or else you can just use the scanned version that I have. And remember, to submit the assignment, it's real simple. You just click on where it here says key concepts, and you can do one of two things. You can either hit the right submission button and just type your answers right here, or if you'd rather do it in a Word document and attach a file, you can do that as well. And then you submit it right to me through Blackboard, and then it's fairly simple. So that's for lecture. For lab this week, we are looking at plant diversity. And again, I've given you a video overview of this plant lab, so I'm not going to go through it too extensively, other than to note that the lab quiz will be due as usual. Remember, this quiz is mostly about the lab that you did 2 weeks ago now, which was the pollution indicator lab, environmental stress and tolerance. Lab 5 is the name from your lab manual, but you calculated a pollution index. So that's this particular lab. So as far as assignments go this week, once again, we have the quiz, we have the key concepts, and then if you are in the Tuesday lab or the Thursday or the Wednesday lab, you do have blog posts this week. So the Tuesday lab, section 151, is posting, and the Wednesday lab, section 152, is going to respond to the blogs. So that's sort of it for this particular week, again, you can kind of expect the same format, the same ideas for the following 2 weeks. I'm also going to be sending out an email probably later this week with information about how to get your lab pages to me. So there's going to be a few different options. I'm guessing none of them are going to be an in-person drop-off, just sort of based on what's going on right now and some of the messages that are sort of coming from the governor's office. It doesn't seem like our stay-at-home order is going to be lifted at the end of the month, which means there won't be an opportunity to do an in-person drop-off, which I was sort of anticipating, but that's okay. We'll do it all virtually. So I'll give you a few options and I'll tell you what that'll look like in order for you to get those pages to me. As always, please make sure that you let me know if you have any questions. And I hope everybody has a good week.